well for writing and querying data. SQL commands help you to store, process, analyze, and manipulate databases. With this, let's look at what a table is. So this is how a table in a database looks like. So here you can see the name of the table is players. On the top, you can see the column names. So we have the player ID, the player name, the country to which the player belongs to, and we also have the goals scored by each of the players. So these are also known as fields in a database. Here, each row represents a record or a tuple. So you have the player ID, which is 103 here. The name of the player is Daniel. He is from England, and the number of goals he has scored is 7. So you can use SQL commands to query, update, insert records, and do a lot of other tasks.
Now we'll see what the features of SQL are. SQL lets you access any information stored in a relational database. With SQL queries, data is extracted from the database in a very efficient way. The structured query language is compatible with all database systems from Oracle, IBM to Microsoft, and it doesn't require much coding to manage databases. Now we will see applications of SQL. SQL is used to create a database, define its structure, implement it, and lets you perform many functions. SQL is also used for maintaining an already existing database. SQL is a powerful language for entering data, modifying data, and extracting data in a database. SQL is extensively used as a client-server language to connect the front end with the back end, thus supporting the client-server architecture. SQL, when deployed as data control language (DCL), helps protect your database from unauthorized access. So let's understand what an ER diagram is. An entity relationship diagram describes the relationship of entities that needs to be stored in a database. ER diagram is mainly a structural design for the database. It is a framework made using specialized symbols to define the relationship between entities. ER diagrams are created based on the three main components: entities, attributes, and relationships. Let's understand the use of ER diagram with the help of a real-world example. Here, a school needs all its student records to be stored digitally, so they approach an IT company to do so. A person from the company will meet the school authorities, note all their requirements, describe them in the form of ER diagram, and get it cross-checked by the school authorities. As the school authorities approve the ER diagram, the database engineers would carry further implementation. Let's have a view of an ER diagram. The following diagram showcases two entities, student and course, and the relationship. The relationship described between student and course is many-to-many, as a course can be opted by several students, and a student can opt for more than one course. Here, student is the entity and it possesses the attributes, that is, student ID, student name, and student age. And the course entity has attributes such as course ID and course name. Now we have an understanding of ER diagram. Let us see why it has been so popular. The logical structure of the database provided by ER diagram communicates the landscape of business to different teams in the company, which is eventually needed to support the business. ER diagram is a GUI representation of the logical structure of a database, which gives a better understanding of the information to be stored in a database. Database designers can use ER diagrams as a blueprint, which reduces complexity and helps them save time to build databases quickly. ER diagrams helps you identify the entities that exist in a system and the relationships between those entities. After knowing its uses, now we should get familiar with the symbols used in ER diagram. The rectangle symbol represents the entities, oval symbol represents attributes, a rectangle embedded in a rectangle represents a weak entity, a dashed oval represents a derived attribute, a diamond symbol represents a relationship among entities, double oval symbol represents multi-valued attributes. Now we should dive in and learn about the components of ER diagram. There are three main components of ER diagram: entity, attribute, and relationship. Entities have weak entity. Attributes are further classified into key attribute, composite attribute, multi-valued attribute, and derived attribute. Relationships are also classified into one-to-one relationships, one-to-many relationships, many-to-one relationships, and many-to-many relationships. Let's understand these components of VIA diagram, starting with entities. An entity can be either a living or a non-living component. An entity is showcased as a rectangle in an ER diagram. Let's understand this with the help of an ER diagram. Here, both student and course are in rectangular shape and are called entities, and they represent the relationship study in a diamond shape. Let's transition to weak entity. An entity that makes reliance over another entity is called a weak entity. The weak entity is showcased as a double rectangle in ER diagram. In the example below, the school is a strong entity because it has a primary key attribute school number. Unlike the school, the classroom is a weak entity because it does not have any primary key, and the room number attribute here acts only as a discriminator and not a primary key. Now, let us know about attributes. Attribute. An attribute exhibits the properties of an entity. An attribute is illustrated with an oval shape in an ER diagram. In the example below, student is an entity and the properties of student such as address, age, name, and roll number are called its attributes. Let's see our first classification under attribute, that is key attribute. The key attribute uniquely identifies an entity from an entity set. The text of a key attribute is underlined. In the example below, we have a student entity and it has attributes name, address, roll number, and age. But here, roll number can uniquely identify a student from a set of students. That's why it is termed as a key attribute. Now, we will see composite attribute. An attribute that is composed of several other attributes is known as a composite attribute. An oval showcases the composite attribute, and the composite attribute oval is further connected with other ovals. In the example below, we can see an attribute name, which can have further subparts such as first name, middle name, and last name. These attributes with further classification is known as composite attribute. Now, let's have a look at multi-valued attribute. An attribute that can possess more than one value are called multi-valued attributes. These are represented as double oval shape. In the example below, the student entity has attributes phone number, roll number, name, and age. Out of these attributes, phone number can have more than one entry, and the attribute with more than one value is called multi-valued attribute. Let's see derived attribute. An attribute that can be derived from other attributes of the entity is known as a derived attribute. In the ER diagram, the derived attribute is represented by dashed oval, and in the example below, student entity has both date of birth and age as attributes. Here, age is a derived attribute as it can be derived by subtracting current date from the student date of birth. Now, after knowing attributes, let's understand relationship in ER diagram. A relationship is showcased by the diamond shape in the ER diagram. It depicts the relationship between two entities. In the below example, student, study, course. Here, both student and course are entities and study is the relationship between them. Now, let's go through the type of relationship. First is one-to-one relationship. When a single element of an entity is associated with a single element of another entity, this is called one-to-one relationship. In the example below, we have student and identification card as entities. We can see a student has only one identification card and an identification card is given to one student. It represents a one-to-one relationship. Let's see the second one, one-to-many relationship. When a single element of an entity is associated with more than one element of another entity is called one-to-many relationship. In the below example, a customer can place many orders, but a particular order cannot be placed by many customers. Now, we will have a look at many-to-one relationship. When more than one element of an entity is related to a single element of another entity, it is called many-to-one relationship. For example, students have to opt for a single course, but a course can be opted by a number of students. Let's see many-to-many relationship. When more than one element of an entity is associated with more than one element of another entity is called many-to-many relationship. For example, an employee can be assigned to many projects, and many employees can be assigned to a particular project. Now, after having an understanding of ER diagram, let us know the points to keep in mind while creating the ER diagram. First, identify all the entities in the system, embed all the entities in a rectangular shape and label them appropriately. This could be a customer, a manager, an order, an invoice, a schedule, etc. Identify relationships between entities and connect them using a diamond in the middle illustrating the relationship. Do not connect relationships. Connect attributes with entities and label them appropriately, and the attributes should be in oval shape. Assure that each entity only appears a single time, and eradicate any redundant entities or relationships in the ER diagram. Make sure your ER diagram supports all the data provided to design the database. Make effective use of colors to highlight key areas in your diagrams.
There are mainly 4 types of SQL commands. So first we have data definition language or DDL. So DDL commands change the structure of the table, like creating a table, deleting a table, or altering a table. All the commands of DDL are auto-committed, which means it permanently saves all the changes in the database. We have create, alter, drop, and truncate as DDL commands. Next, we have data manipulation language or DML. So DML commands are used to modify a database. It is responsible for all forms of changes in the database. DML commands are not auto-committed, which means it can't permanently save all the changes in the database. We have select, update, delete, and insert as DML commands. Now select command is also referred to as DQL or data query language. Third, we have data control language or DCL. So DCL commands allow you to control access to data within the database. These DCL commands are normally used to create objects related to user access and also control the distribution of privileges among users. So we have grant and revoke, which are the examples of data control language. Finally, we have something called as transaction control language or TCL. So TCL commands allow the user to manage database transactions. Commit and rollback are example of TCL. Now let's see the basic SQL command structure. So first, we have the select statement. So here you specify the various column names that you want to fetch from the table. We write the table name using the from statement. Next, we have the where clause to filter out our table based on some conditions. So you can see here where condition 1, condition 2, and so on. Then we have the group by clause that takes various column names. So you can write group by column 1, column 2, and so on. Next, we have the having clause to filter out tables based on groups. Finally, we have the order by clause to filter out the result in ascending or descending order. Now talking about the various data types in SQL. So we have exact numeric, which has integer, small int, bit, and decimal. Then we have approximate numeric, which are float and real. Then we have some date and time data types such as date, time, timestamp, and others. Then we have string data type, which includes char, this varchar, and text. Finally, we have binary data types, and binary data types have binary, var binary, and image. Now let's see some of the various operators that are present in SQL. So first we have our basic arithmetic operators. So you have addition, the subtraction, multiplication, division, and modulus. Then we have some logical operators like all, and, any, or, between, exists, and so on. Finally, we have some comparison operators such as equal to, not equal to, this greater than, less than, greater than equal to, or less than equal to, not less than, or not greater than. Now let me take you to my MySQL workbench where we will learn to write some of the important SQL commands, use different statements, functions, data types, and operators that we just learned.
In this session, we will learn how to install MySQL Workbench and then we will run some commands. Firstly, we will visit the official Oracle website, that is mysql.com, and now we'll move to the downloads page. Now scroll down and click on MySQL GPL downloads. Now under community downloads, click on MySQL installer for Windows. The current versions are available to download. I will choose this installer and click the download button. Now here just click on no thanks, just start my download. Once the installer has downloaded, open it. You may be prompted for permission. Click yes. This opens the installer. You will be asked to choose the setup type. We will go with custom. Click next. Now you have to select the products you want to install. We will install only the MySQL Server, MySQL Shell and the MySQL Workbench. Expand MySQL servers by double clicking on it and choose the version you want to install and click on this arrow. Now you have to do the same thing for applications. Expand applications and choose the MySQL Workbench version you want to install and click on the arrow. And we'll do the same thing for MySQL Shell. We'll choose the latest version, click on the arrow. So these are the products that have to be installed in a system. Now we'll click next. I'll click execute to download and install the server. This may take a while depending on your internet speed. As the download is completed, click next. Now you'll see the product configuration. Click next. Now we'll configure our SQL Server instance. Here we'll go with the default settings and click next. And under authentication, select use strong password encryption for authentication, which is recommended, and click on next. Now here set the password for your root user. By the way, root is the default user. This user will have access to everything. I will set my password. Now I will click on next. And here also we'll keep the default settings and click on next. Now to apply configuration, we will execute the process. Once all the configuration steps are complete, click finish. Now you will see the installation is complete. It will launch MySQL Workbench and MySQL Shell after clicking on finish. Now the Shell and Workbench has started. Now we will connect by clicking on the root user. It will ask for a password. Enter the password and it will connect successfully. The workbench has started. Now we'll just connect the server. So first we'll open command prompt. Now we'll reach the path where MySQL files are present. We'll go into this PC, local disk C, program files, MySQL, MySQL Server 8.0, bin. And now I'll copy this path. Now I'll open the command prompt and write a command cd space and paste the link and press enter. Now I'll write another command that will be MySQL -u space root -p and press enter. Now it will ask for your password. Just enter the password and press enter. Now the server has started and now we'll see some commands in MySQL Workbench. First we will open MySQL Workbench. Now we'll click on the local instance MySQL 80 and enter the password to connect to the local host. The MySQL workbench has started. Now we will see some commands. The first command we will see is show databases. Show databases semicolon, and now we will select the whole command and click on this execute button, and here we will see the result in the result grid. These are the databases that are stored already in the database. Now there are 4 databases, that is Information Schema, MySQL, Performance Schema and SYS. Now we will select one of the database. We will use MySQL. Now we have selected the MySQL database, and now in this database we will see which tables are stored in this MySQL database. To see that, we will run a command show tables. We'll select the command and click on the execute button. These are the tables that are stored in this MySQL database, that is columns underscore prive, component, DB and much more.
Now let me go ahead and open my MySQL workbench. So in the search bar I'll search for MySQL workbench. You can see I'm using the 8.0 version. I'll click on it, and here it says welcome to MySQL workbench, and below under connections you can see I have already created a connection which says local instance. Then you have the root, the local host and the port number. Let me click on it. You can see the service, the username is root, and I'll enter my password and hit OK. Now this will open the SQL editor. So this is how the MySQL workbench looks like. Here we learn some of the basic SQL commands. So first let me show you the databases that are already present. So the command is show databases. You can hit tab to autocomplete. I'll use a semicolon. I'll select this, and here on the top you can see the execute button. So if I run this, below you can see the output. It says show databases, 7 rows are returned, which means currently there are 7 databases. You can see the names. Alright, now let's say I want to see the tables that are present inside this database called world. So I'll use the command use world, which is the database name. Now let me run it. So currently I'm using the world database. So to display the tables that are present in the world database, I can use the show command and write show tables. Give a semicolon, and I'll hit Control Enter this time to run it. Alright, so you can see the tables that are present inside this world database. So we have 3 tables in total: city, country and country language. Now if you are to see the rows that are present in one of the tables, you can use the select command. So I'll write select star, which basically means I want to display all the columns. So star here means to display all the columns. Then I'll write my from the table name, that is city. So this command is going to display me all the rows that are present inside the city table. So if I hit Control Enter, alright, you can see the message here. It says 1000 rows were returned, which means there were total 1000 records present inside the city table. So here you can see there's an ID column, a name column, this country code, district and population. Alright. Similarly, you can check the structure of the table by using the describe command. So I'll write describe, and then I'll give the table name, that is city. Now let's just run it. There you go. The field shows the column names. So we have ID, name, country code, district, population. Type here shows the data type of each of the columns. So district is character 20, ID is an integer, population is also integer. Null says yes or no, which means if no, then there are no null values. If it's yes, which means there are null values in your table. Key here represents whether you have any primary key or foreign key, and these are some extra information. Now let's learn how to create a table in MySQL. So I'll use the create table command for this, and before that let me create a database and I'll name it as SQL intro. So the command is create database and I'll give my database name, that is SQL_intro. Let me give a semicolon and hit Control Enter. So you can see I have created a new database. Now if I run this command, that is show databases, you can see this newly created database, that is SQL intro. If I scroll down, there you go, you can see the name here, SQL intro. Okay, now within this database we'll create a table called employee details. Now this will have the details of some employees. So let me first show you how to create a table that will be present inside the SQL intro database. So I'll use the command create table and then I'll give my table name, that is going to be employee_details. Next, the syntax is to give the column names. So my first column would be the name column, which is basically the employee name, followed by the data type for this column. Since name is a text column, so I'll use varchar and I'll give a value of 25. So it can hold only 25 characters. Okay. Next, I also want the age of the employee. Now age is always an integer, so I'll give int. Okay. Then we can have the gender of the employee. So gender can be represented as F or M, F for female and M for male. So I'm using the char data type or character data type and I'll give the value as 1. Then let's have the date of join or DOJ, and this is going to be of data type date. Alright. Next, we'll have the city name, that is the city to which the employee belongs to. So again, this is going to be varchar 15. Finally, we'll have a salary column, and salary we'll keep it as float, since salary can be in decimal numbers as well. Now I'll give a semicolon. Alright, so let me just quickly run through it. So first I wrote my create command, then the table, which is also a keyword, followed by the table name, which is employee details here, and then we gave the column names such as name, age, this gender, date of join, city and salary. For each of the columns we also give the data type. Alright, so let me just run it. Okay, so here you can see we have successfully created our first table. Now you can use the describe command to see the structure of the table. I'll write describe emp_details. If I run this, there you go. So under field you can see the column names, then you have the data types. Null represents if the table can accept null values or not, and these are basically empty and we haven't set any default constraint. Alright, moving ahead. Now let's learn to add data to our table using the insert command. So on a notepad I have already written my insert statement, so let me just copy it and then I'll explain it one by one. Alright, so if you see this, so we have used an insert into statement or a command followed by the table name, that is emp details. Then this is the syntax. Using values I have passed in all the records. So first we have Jimmy, which is the name of the employee, then we have 35, which basically represents the age, then M means the gender or the sex, then we have the date of join, next we have the city to which the employee belongs to, and finally we have the salary of the employee. So this particular information represents one record or a tuple. Similarly, the next employee we have is Shane. You can see the age and other information. Then we have Mary, this Dwayne, Sarah and Amy. Alright, so let me go ahead and run this. So this will help you insert the values in the table that you have created. You can see we have successfully inserted 6 records. Now to display the records, let me use the select statement. So I'm using select star from emp underscore details. If I run this, you can see my table here and the values it has. So we have the name column, the age column, the state of join, city, salary, and these are the values that you can see here. Moving ahead, now let's say you want to see the unique city names present in the table. So in this case, you can use the distinct keyword along with the column name in the select statement. So let me show you how you can print the distinct city names that are present in our table. Now if you notice this table clearly, we have Chicago, Seattle, Boston, Austin, there's New York, and there's Seattle repeated again. So I only want to print the unique values. So for that, I can write my select statement as select distinct. Then I'll give my column name, which is city, from my table name, that is emp details. If I run this, you can see my query has returned 5 rows and these are the values. So we have Chicago, Seattle, which was repeated twice, is just been shown once. Then we have Boston, Austin and New York. Now let's see how you can use inbuilt aggregate functions in SQL. So suppose you want to count the number of employees in the table. In that case, you can use the count function in the select statement. So let me show you how to do that. So I'll write select. I'll use my function name, that is count. Now since I want to know the total number of employees, I'm going to use their name inside the brackets from employee underscore details. Now if I run this, this will return the total number of employees that are present in the table. So we have 6 employees in total. Now if you see here in the result, it says count name. Now this column is actually not readable at all. So what SQL provides is something called as an alias name. So you can give an alias to the resultant output. So here I can write select count of name and use an alias as I can give an alias as count underscore name and run this statement again. There you go. You can see here in the resultant output we have the column name as count name, which was our alias name. Now suppose you want to get the total sum of salaries, you can use another aggregate function called sum. So I'll write my select statement, and this time instead of count I'm going to write sum, and since I want to find the sum of salaries, so inside the bracket I'll give my salary column from my table name, that is employee details. If I run this, this will result in the total sum of salaries. So basically it adds up all the salaries that were present in the salary column. Now let's say you want to find the average salary. So instead of sum, you can write the average function, which is avg. So this will give you the average salary from the column salary. So you can see it here. This says average salary. Now if you want, you can give an alias name to this as well. Now you can select specific columns from the table by using the column names in the select statement. So initially we were selecting all the columns. For example, like you saw here, the star represents that we want to see all the columns from the employee details table. Now suppose you want to see only specific columns, you can mention those column names in the select statement. So let's say I want to select just the name, age and the city column from my table, that is employee details. So this will result in displaying only the name, age and city column from the table. If I run it, there you go. It has given only 3 columns to me. Now SQL has a where clause to filter rows based on a particular condition. So if you want to filter your table based on specific conditions, you can use where clause. Now where clause comes after you give your table name. So suppose you want to find the employees with age greater than 30. In this case you can use a where clause. So let me show you how to do it. I'll write select star from my table name, that is employee details, and after this I'll use my where clause. So I'll write where age greater than 30. If I run this, it will give me the output where the age is only greater than 30. So it excluded everything that is less than 30. So we have 4 employees whose age is greater than 30 here. Now suppose you want to find only female employees from the table, you can also use a where clause here. So I'll write select, let's say I want only the name, the gender, which is sex here, comma city from my table, that is employee details, where I'll give my column name, that is sex, is equal to, since I want only the female employees, I'll give F and run this statement. Okay, you can see here our employee table has 3 female employees. Now suppose you want to find the details of the employees who belong to Chicago or Austin. In this case you can use the OR operator. Now the OR operator in SQL displays a record if any of the conditions separated by OR is true. So let me show you what I mean. So since I want the employees who are from Chicago and Austin, I can use an OR operator. So I'll write select star from emp details, which is my table name. Then I'll give my where clause where city equal to, I'll give my city name as Chicago, and then I'm going to use the OR operator, or city equal to, I'll write Austin. I'll give a semicolon and let me run it. There you go. So in the output you can see all the employees who belong to the city Chicago and Austin. Now there is another way to write the same SQL query. So you can use an in operator to specify multiple conditions. So let me just copy this, and instead of using the OR operator, this time I'm going to use the in operator. So I'll delete this. After the where clause I'm going to write where city and use the in operator. Inside bracket I'll give my city names as Chicago and I want Austin. So I'll give a comma and write my next city name, that is Austin. So this query is exactly the same that we wrote on top. Let me run this. You will get the same output. There you go. So we have Jimmy and Dwayne who are from Chicago and Austin respectively. Now SQL provides the between operator that selects values within a given range. The values can be numbers, text or dates. Now suppose you want to find the employees whose date of join was between 1st of Jan 2000 and 31st of December 2010. So let me show you how to do it. I'll write select star from emp details where my date of join, that is DOJ, between, I'll give my two date values, that is 1st of Jan 2000 and I'll give my second value, the date value, that is 31st of December 2010. So every employee who has joined between these two dates will be displayed in the output. If I run it, we have two employees who had joined between 2000 and 2010. So we have Jimmy and Mary here who had joined in 2005 and 2009 respectively. Alright. Now in where clause, you can use the AND operator to specify multiple conditions. Now the AND operator displays a record if all the conditions separated by AND are true. So let me show you an example. I'll write select star from employee details table where I want the age to be greater than 30 and I want sex to be male. Alright, so here you can see I have specified two conditions. So if both the conditions are true, only then it will result in an output. If I run it, you can see there are two employees who are male and their age is greater than 30. Now let's talk about the group by statement in SQL. So the group by statement groups rows that have the same values into summary rows. Like, for example, you want to find the average salary of customers in each department. Now the group by statement is often used with aggregate functions such as count, sum and average to group the result set into one or more columns. Let's say we want to find the total salary of employees based on their gender. So in this case you can use the group by clause. So I'll write select, let's say sex, comma, I want to find the total sum of salary, as I'll give an alias name, let's say total salary, from my table name, that is employee details. Next I'm going to group it by sex. Okay, let me run it. There you go. So we have two genders, male and female, and here you can see the total salary. So what this SQL statement did was, first it grouped all the employees based on the gender and then it found the total salary. Now SQL provides the order by keyword to sort the result set in ascending or descending order. Now the order by keyword sorts the records in ascending order by default. To sort the records in descending order, you can use the DESC keyword. So let's say I want to sort my employee details table in terms of salary. So I'll write select star from emp underscore details and I'll use my order by clause on the salary column. So this will sort all the records in ascending order of their salary, which is by default. You can see the salary column is sorted in ascending order. Now suppose you want to sort the salary column and display it in descending order, you can use this keyword, that is DESC. Let me run it. You can see the output. Now this time the salary is sorted in descending order and you have the other values as well. Now let me show you some basic operations that you can do using the select statement. So suppose I write select and do an addition operation, let's say 10 plus 20, and I'll give an alias name as addition. If I run this, it will give me the sum of 10 and 20, that is 30. Similarly, you can use the subtraction operator and you can change the alias name as, let's say, subtract. Let's run it. You get minus 10. Now there are some basic inbuilt functions. There are a lot of inbuilt functions in SQL, but here I'll show you a few. Suppose you want to find the length of a text or a string, you can use the length function. So I'll write select and then use the length function. I'll hit tab to autocomplete. Let's say I want to find the length of country India and I'll give an alias as total length. If I run it, you see here it returns 5 because there are 5 letters in India. There's another function called repeat. So let me show you how repeat works. So I'll write select repeat. Let's say I want to repeat the symbol that is at the rate. I'll put it in single quotes because it is a text character and I want to repeat this character for 10 times. Close the bracket and let's run it. You can see here in the output it has printed at the rate 10 times. You can count it. Alright. Now let's say you want to convert a text or a string to uppercase or lowercase. You can do that as well. So I'll write select and use the function called upper. Let's say I want to convert my string, that is India, to uppercase. I'm not giving in any alias name. If I run this, see, my input was capital I and everything else was in small letter. In the output you can see it is converted my input to all caps. Similarly, you can change this. Let's say you want to print something in lowercase, you can use the lower function. Let's say this time everything is in uppercase. If I run it, it converts India to lowercase. Now let's explore a few date and time functions. Let's say you want to find the current date. There's a function called CUR, which stands for current, and this is the function I'm talking about, which is current date. If I run this, you will get the current date, that is 28th of Jan 2021. And let's say you want to extract the day from a date value, so you can use the day function. Let's say I'll use day, and I want to find the day from my current date. If I run this, you get 28, which is today's day. Now similarly, you can also display the current date and time. So for that, you can use a function that is called now. So this will return the current date and time. You can see this is the date value, and then we have the current time. Alright. And this brings us to the end of our demo session. So let me just scroll through whatever we have learned. So first, I showed you how you can see that databases present in MySQL. Then we used one of the databases and checked the tables in it. Then we created another database called SQL Intro for our demo purpose. We used that database, and then we created this table called employee details with column names like name, integer, the sex, date of join, city, and salary. I showed you the structure of the database. Let me run this again so you get an idea. You can see this was the structure of our table. Then we went ahead and inserted a few records. So we inserted records for 6 employees. So you have the employee name, the age, the gender, the date of join, the city to which the employee belongs to, and the salary of the employee. Then we saw how you can use the select statement and display all the columns present in the table. We learned how you can display the unique city names. We learned how to use different aggregate functions like count, average, and sum. Then we learned how you could display specific columns from the table. We learned how to use where clause. Then we used an or operator. We learned about in operator, the between operator. Then we used an and operator to select multiple conditions. Finally, we learned about group by, order by, and some basic SQL operations. Now it's time to explore some string functions in MySQL. So I've given a comment, string functions. First, let's say you want to convert a certain string into uppercase. So I can write select. The function I'll use is upper, and within this function you can pass in the string. Let's say I'll write India. If you want, you can give an alias name as, let's say, uppercase. I'll give a semicolon and let's run it. There you go. So my input was in sentence case, and using the upper function we have converted everything into uppercase. Similarly, let me just copy this and I'll show you. If you want to convert a string into a lowercase, you can use the lower function. I'll run this. You can see the result. Everything is in lowercase now. Of course, I need to change the alias name to lowercase. Now, instead of using lower as the function, there is another function that MySQL provides, which is called the L case. So I'll just edit this and write L case, and let's say I'll write India in uppercase. Let's run it. It returns me the same result. Cool. Now moving on, let's say you want to find the length of a string. You can use the character length function. I'll write select, use the function character length, and I'm again going to pass in my string as India as, let's say, total length. Let's run it. This time I'm going to hit Control Enter to run my SQL command. There you go. It has given us the right result, which is 5, because India has 5 characters in it. Now these functions you can also apply on a table. Now let me show you how to do it. Let's say we already have the students table and you want to find the length of each of the student names. So here you can pass stu_name and you can give the same alias name, let's say total length, and then you can write from table name, that is students. If I run this, you can see the output. It has given me total 20 rows of information. It is not readable actually. Let me also display these student names so that we can compare their length. Alright, I'll run this again and now you can see the result. So Joseph has 6 characters, Nilesh has 6, Vipul has 5, Anubhav has 7. Similarly, if you see, Akshay has 6, Tanishq has 7, Raghav has 6, Cummins has 7, Rabada has 6, so on and so forth. Now instead of using this character length, you can also use the function char length. It will work the same way. Let's see the result. There you go. It has given us the same result. You can either use character length or char length. Now there's another very interesting function called concat. So the concat function adds 2 or more expressions together. Let's say I'll write select. I'll use the function concatenate. The function is actually concat, and I'm going to pass in my string values. Let's say India is in Asia. Let's run this and see our result. You can see here it has concatenated everything. Let us make it more readable. I'll give a space in between so that you can read it clearly. Now this is much more readable. India is in Asia, and if you want you can give an alias name as well, as let's say merged. There you go. Now the same concat operation you can also perform on a table. I'm going to use the same students table. Let's say I want to return the student ID followed by the student name, and then I am going to merge the student name followed by a space followed by the age of the student, and I can give an alias as, let's say, name_age from my table, that is students. Let's see how this works. Okay, you see here the result is very clear. We have the student ID, the student name, and the concatenated column that we created, which was name_age, where we have the student name with a space followed by the age of the student. If I scroll down, you can see the rest of the results. Cool. Now moving ahead, let's see how the reverse function works in MySQL. So the MySQL reverse function returns a string with the characters printed in reverse order. So suppose I write select reverse. I'll use the same string again. Let's say I have India. Let's run it. You will see all the characters printed in reverse order. Again, you can perform the same operation on a table as well. Let's say I'll write select reverse and I'll pass in the column as student name from my table, that is students. Let's run it. it gives you 20 students and all the names have been printed in reverse order. Okay, now let's see what the replace function does. So the replace function replaces all occurrences of a substring within a string within a new substring. So let me show you what I mean. I'll write select replace. I'll pass in my input string, which is, let's say, orange is a vegetable, which is ideally incorrect. I'm purposely writing this so that I can replace the word vegetable with fruit. Okay, so what this replace function does is it is going to find where my word vegetable is within the string, my input string, and it is going to replace my word vegetable with fruit. Let's run it and see the output. There you go. Now this is correct, which is orange is a fruit. Alright, now MySQL also provides some trim functions. You can use the left trim, right trim, and just the trim function. So let me show you how this left trim works. Left trim or L trim removes the leading space characters from a string passed as an argument. So say I write select, I'll use the left trim function, which is L trim, and then I'm going to purposely give a few spaces in the beginning of the string. I'll give a word, let's say India, and then I'll give some space after the word India and see how the ltrim works. If I run this, it gives me India, which is fair enough. But before that, let's first find the length of my string. So I'll use my length function here, and within this function I am going to find the length of my string, which has India along with some leading and trailing spaces. I'll paste this here, give a semicolon, and I'll run it. Okay, so the entire string is 17 characters long, or the length of the string is 17. Now say I use ltrim on my same string, what it returns me is India, and if I run length over it, you can see the difference, as in you can see how many spaces were deleted from the left of the string. You can see here, now it says 17, and I'm going to use ltrim. Let's see the difference. It gives me 12. The reason being it has deleted 5 spaces from the left. You can count it, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So 17 minus 5 is 12, which is correct. Similarly, you can use the rtrim function, which removes the trailing spaces from a string. Trailing spaces are these spaces. When you use left trim, it deletes the leading spaces, which is this. Now let me just replace ltrim with rtrim, which stands for right trim, and see the result. So the length is 10 now. The reason being it has deleted 7 spaces from the right of the string. If you can count it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. Cool. You can also use the trim function, which will delete both the leading and the trailing spaces. So here, if I just write trim and I'll run it, it gives me 5, because India is total 5 characters long and it has deleted all the leading and the trailing spaces. Alright. There's also a function called position in MySQL. The position function returns the position of the first occurrence of a substring in a string. So if the substring is not found with the original string, the function will return 0. So let's say I'll write select position. I want to find where fruit is in my string, that is orange is a fruit. I'll give an alias as name. There's some error here. This should be within double quotes. Now let's run it and see the result. Okay, it says at the 13th place or at the 13th position we have the word fruit in our string, which is orange is a fruit. Now the final function we are going to see is called ASCII. So the ASCII function returns the ASCII value for a specific character. Let's say I write select ASCII of the letter small a. If I run this, it will give me the ASCII value, which is 97. Let's say you want to find the ASCII value of 4. Let's see the result. It gives me 52. Alright. In this session, we are going to learn two important SQL statements or clauses that are widely used, that is group by and having. First, we'll understand the basics of group by and having, and then jump into MySQL workbench to implement these statements. So let's begin. First, what is group by in SQL? So the group by statement or clause groups records into summary rows and returns one record for each group. It groups the rows with the same group by item expressions and computes aggregate functions for the resulting group. A group by clause is a part of select expression. In each group, no two rows have the same value for the grouping column or columns. Now below, you can see the syntax of group by. So first we have the select statement, and then followed by the column names that we want to select. From, we have the table name, followed by the where condition, and next we have the group by clause, and here we include the column names. Finally we have the order by and the column names. Now here is an example of the group by clause. So we want to find the average salary of employees for each department. So here you can see we have the employees table. It has the employee ID, the employee name, the age of the employee, we have the gender, the date on which the employee had joined the company. Then we have the department to which each of these employees belong to. We have the city to which the employees belong to. And then we have the salary in dollars. So actually we'll be using this employees table on MySQL workbench as well. So if you were to find the average salary of employees in each department, so this is how your SQL query with group by clause would look like. So we have selected department, and then we are using an aggregate function, that is AVG, which is average, and we have chosen the salary column, and here we have given an alias name, which is average underscore salary, which appears in the output. You can see here from employees, and we have grouped it by department. So here in the output you can see we have the department names and the average salary of the employees in each department. Now let me take you to my MySQL workbench, where we will implement group by and solve specific problems. Okay, so I am on my MySQL workbench. So let me make my connection first. I'll enter the password. So this will open my SQL editor. So first of all, let me check the databases that I have. So I'll use my query, that is show databases. Let's run it. Okay, you can see we have a list of databases here. I'm going to use my SQL underscore intro database. So I'll write use SQL underscore intro. So this will take us inside this database. I'll run it. Alright. Now you can check the tables that are present in SQL underscore intro database. If I write show tables, you can see the list of tables that are already present in this database. To do our demo and understand group by as well as having, let me first create an employee table. So I'll write create table employees. Next, I'll give my column name as employee underscore ID, which is the ID for each employee. I'll give my data type as integer, and I'll assign employee ID as my primary key. Next, I'll give employee underscore name and my data type would be varchar. I'll give the size as 25. My third column would be the age column. Age would obviously be an integer. Then I have my gender column. I'll use character data type and assign a value of 1 or size of 1. Next we have the date of join, and the data type will be date. We have the department column as well. This is going to be of varchar and 20 will be the size. Next we have the city column, which is actually the city to which the employee belongs to. And finally we have the salary column, which will have the salary for all the employees. Okay, now let me select and run this. You can see here we have successfully created our table. Now to check if our table was created or not, you can use the describe command. I'll write describe employees. You can see the structure of the table so far. Alright, now it's time for us to insert a few records into this employees table. So I'll write insert into employees, and I'll copy paste the records which I have already written on a notepad. So let me show you. So this is my EMP notepad, and you can see I have already put the information for all the employees. So let me just copy this and we'll paste it here. Alright, let me go to the top and verify if all the records are fine. Alright, so let's run our insert query. Okay, so you can see here we have inserted 20 rows of information, and now let's check the table information or the records that are present in our employees table. I'll write select star from employees. If I run it, you can see here I have my employee ID, the employee name, age, gender, we have the city, salary, and in total we have inserted 20 records. Now let me run a few SQL commands to check how the structure of our table is. Let's say I want to see the distinct cities that are present in our table. So I'll write select distinct city from employees. If I run this, you see here there are total 8 different cities present in our employees table. So we have Chicago, there's Seattle, Boston, we have New York, Miami, and Detroit as well. Now let's say you want to know the total number of departments that are present. So you can use distinct department. If I run this, alright, you can see we have 7 rows returned, and here are the department names. So we have sales, marketing, product, tech, IT, finance, and HR. Alright, now let me show you another SQL command. Now this is to use an aggregate function. So I want to find the average age of all the employees from the table. So I can write select avg, which is the aggregate function for average. Inside that I have passed my age column from employees. If I run this, so the average age of all the employees in our table is 33.35. Now say you want to find the average age of employees in each department. So for this you need to use the group by clause. I'll give a comment here. I want to find the average age in each department. So I'll write select department, comma, I'll write average of age from employees group by department. Now if I run this, you can see here we have our 7 departments on the left, and on the right you can see the average age of employees in each of these departments. Now you can see here in the output it says AVG of age, which is not readable, so I can give an alias name as average age. Alright, I can bring this down, and if you want you can round the values also. So you can round the decimal places, so I'll use a round function before the average function, and the round function takes 2 parameters. One is the variable and the decimal place you want to round it to. So if I run this, there you go. You can see here we have the average age of all the employees in each of these departments. Alright. Now suppose you want to find the total salary of all the employees for each department. So you can write select